Former National Security Advisor John Bolton was indicted yesterday on 18 charges, and it's been a long time coming. Back in 2020, he put out this book called The Room Where It Happened, and the National Security Council was like, hey, look, if you want to write a book about your time in government, we need to make sure that we check this thing out to make sure it doesn't have any classified information, right? Book still came out just a year after he'd left Trump's cabinet, and there was a concern that the information in there may have, endangered us or done some, hurt national security. So Bolton initially complied, but he got around to having a version of the book that the National Security Council wasn't able to authorize before it was released. And the Justice Department tried to block the book from coming out because of that. But a federal judge stopped them, and basically, in stopping them, acknowledged that Bolton did not get final approval and that he might have endangered the national security of the United States by releasing it without, making sure it got one last, heads up for or check from the feds. Less than 2 months ago, his house was raided by the FBI, and he wasn't there when it happened initially, and he came around after the fact. But apparently this was part of an investigation that started when Biden was president. So it's not something that Trump was the originator of, because he and Trump have not been getting along in the years since he stopped being part of his little team of I don't even want to call it like in his administration, just like in his inner circle. But anyways, Bolton is the third person on Trump's enemies list who has been gone after in this way. You've had, former FBI Director James Comey and the New York Attorney General Letitia James. But as the Associated Press points out, unlike the other two cases filed over the last month by a hastily appointed attorney, this one was signed by career national security prosecutors. And what they're alleging, it's also mentioned that this indictment is significantly more detailed in its allegations than the other cases. They're claiming that between 2018 and this past August, Bolton shared with two relatives more than 1,000 pages of information about his day-to-day activities in government. And these pages would talk about meetings with different heads of states and foreign leaders. Now, it's being said that those two individuals who are not being charged are his daughter and his wife. And I'm going to say this. I've been very vocal about my dislike for Bolton. I think he is one of the least likable people in public life of the last probably 20, 30 years. Like, it's certainly of the, like since the Bush era. He's someone who wants to go to war with every damn country that I really can't stand him. So I will be very upfront in saying that my biases may be affecting this as well. But then again, I'm also the same person that doesn't like Trump either. But even as someone who doesn't like Trump, I can't, because this is getting used as like, oh, this is part of, and Bolton is feeding into it as well. He's playing in he's playing his card too. Now I have become the latest target and weaponized in the Justice Department to charge those he deems to be his enemies with charges that were declined before or distort the facts. So, as someone who cannot stand Bolton, as someone who's not on Trump's team, I really can't see what is incorrect about these charges. If there is evidence that he shared classified information with his wife, his daughter, his neighbor, his mailman, that's not good. That hurts the national security of the U.S. There's a reason why top-ranking government officials are usually the ones who are privy to what's going on. And if you decide, because no one's mad at him for writing a book where he talks trash about Trump. Everybody was doing that at one point. But if you're going to decide to write a book about events which were not that long ago, you need to have the proper authorization to be able to do that. You can't just decide, well, I'm going to write about North Korea and what they did last year as we're still negotiating with them, or as this may still affect whatever's going on currently. Just because I'm out of government doesn't mean it matters anymore. It's and the egotism to be able to just like, oh yeah, I know that I didn't get this approved for the, by the proper channels before the book came out, but oh well. So if he gets, if he's found guilty, because he's pleading not guilty, but if they have the evidence and he's found guilty, I really can't say that he didn't get what was coming to him. I mean, like, even if people are worried, oh, Trump's going after his enemies. Okay, but how many of us are like sharing around classified information? Because most people that don't like Trump are, commentators. There's some politicians in there, obviously, but like most of us, even if we can't stand the 45th and 47th U.S. president, we're still like not doing anything that could be argued as impeding the national security of the U.S. See, getting those guys to sign this gives it a level of credibility that I think people are not wanting to account for, because they want to roll with the narrative that Trump is just going after political opponents, when Bolton is an extremely arrogant guy that felt like he could write a book, not go through the proper channels of getting it authorized, in terms of the information it was sharing, and expect no repercussions for doing that. But this is really unprecedented, because I can't think of any past instance where there was someone who was like friendly with the president, right? Maybe they were in their cabinet, they were in their administration, and they had a falling out with them to where they left, and they wrote some book or something after the fact that kind of revealed stuff that that they didn't get a prior approval to, and then they were prosecuted or indicted over. This is not not atypical of the kind of, I mean, again, people have political feuds. That's nothing new, right? Falling outs, but to go from being Trump's national security advisor to Trump critic who has been indicted and is facing almost 20 damn criminal charges, I think is just nuts. Of course, like I said, in Bolton's defense, there's always the oh so lovely irony of the president who had, what was that, 90 plus criminal charges last year, having his attorney general sit up there talking about no one is above the law. The law applies for everybody. So yeah, I'm sure. I think even if Bolton is found guilty, I don't believe he'll face any jail time. I think he'll get some good lawyers who will, make sure that whatever penalty he faces, it'll probably be like community service or something. They always want to pretend like when they go after these people that, oh, we're fair, we're impartial, we are just following the law. But there are, as Jimmy Dore once said, there are laws for poor people and law for no one else, or for other laws for rich people. And Bolton, even if he gets charged like anybody else would, and most of us wouldn't even be in a position to get these types of charges, he is still more than likely not going to get the full ramifications of what doing something like this would entail for a regular person. But man, this is wild. He really has it's kind of like this. I think after Trump lost, he felt more comfortable, thinking, okay, well, it's over. Again, they're saying that the FBI started looking into that Bolton's investigation began while Biden was president, which maybe, but I feel like Trump being there possibly could have escalated it, because it just seems so weird to me that there was this 4-year period where he's able to just like frolic around and go on TV and talk trash, right, with no source of penalty or pickup. But then all of a sudden, during the first, 9-10 months of Trump being back in office, he's sitting there facing criminal charges, and just, I don't know, just the timing of it is what I find really peculiar. But like I said, the most important thing is whether or not this is politically motivated. If these charges are legitimate, which they appear to be, I cannot fault Trump for pursuing them, or fault anyone but Bolton for putting himself in this situation. It seems to me all he had to do was just get the book approved by the National Security Council that last time before putting it out. But I guess maybe he thought the public would lose interest if it were more than 2 years after the fact. Because we've been talking about this, that a lot of these books are, by different politicians and pundits, they come out so quickly after a person's tenure or moments of heightened interest is over, that you start to wonder how much of it is about like telling a good story or writing something that's like worth reading, or is it just chasing whatever interest short term you think you may have, right? So like we talked about how with Harris, not even a year later after losing the 2024 election, she has a book. Bolton, not even 2 years right after leaving Trump's cabinet, here's his book. And you wonder again, like, was there some kind of contractual thing that they tried to get this book released as fast as possible, and they thought that final review would make it take longer or not meet the release date? It's really, it's like all these different like horrible parts of American culture in terms of there being different laws for rich people, a lot of these like politicians and people in that sphere feeling that they're you know indestructible, untouchable, they can break laws and get away with it. It's all coming to a head here. We're gonna see if Bolton has to face the full extent of, if they find him guilty. So this is a hell of a story, man. I can't, I truly, I'm just sitting here, re- just going back in history. I can't think of any other time where a former member of a president's cabinet was indicted, like while the person that they served under was in office. That's that might actually be unprecedented